right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our next episode of the Athlete Health and Performance Podcast. I'm Stefanie Bourassa, your host, sports physical therapist, and it's my pleasure to have an invited guest as we're getting into the start of the golf season. And I have Sarah Baribeau with me today, and she's a PT, but she also has a Titleist Performance Institute multiple level certifications. And so, Sarah, tell us a little bit about what Titleist Performance Institute is and what it means.
Yeah, so TPI or Titleist Performance Institute is located out in Oceanside, California. Some brilliant minds came together and they've been working with golfers for a lot of years, collecting a lot of data. And so if you know the names Greg Rose or Dave Phillips, those are the co-founders. Greg Rose is he's actually a bio biomechanist or engineer. I'm not sure which one, but so he's got a very good mind that merges well in the medical field. He's also a chiropractor by trade. So he's the guy that helps coach and teach the medical side of the golf world and what it's like to work with golfers. So TPI and its model is you learn a movement screen as level one, and then it divides into three different realms. You got your medical track, your golf track, and a fitness track. So yeah, I've done medical up to their medical three, which was really cool. Went to Oceanside, California. Their home base is pretty sick, and they were under construction at the time, so the new stuff coming out is pretty wild. So I was very fortunate enough to learn from him and his work and the work that they've done together.
That's awesome. So it sounds like a lot of the skills you're using and have learned with your certification kind of keeps athletes and golfers kind of healthy back on the course or early on. And I know it's April, and while it's snowing here in New England, most golf courses opened up a couple weeks ago, and so a lot of our viewers are starting to get back out there. And what's important right now as it's early in the season for golfers to know as they start to get back on that course.
Well, if if I learned anything from going out for the first time last week, I did not pick it up like riding a bike. So things change over a long winter if you don't golf in the off season. But what I did do is strength and conditioning. Like I always put that at the forefront. Like you got to make sure you take care of your body, and that is way more than just strength and conditioning. But for those folks who are headed out to the course soon or have already, just making sure that you ease into it. I don't think people realize how much forces are occurring on the body with one swing.
Mhm.
But obviously, if you have a higher handicap, we're taking multiple swings and we're straining our bodies differently. And it does take a toll, especially if it's the first time out. We're not used to that. So, really kind of recommending a proper warm up, which does not just look like walking up to the driving range and practice swinging, because you're going to just be increasing that repetition, but just bringing the body through movements that it's going to be doing during the golf swing, breaking down some muscle activation, especially in the hips and the trunk, is really, really helpful to minimize the excessive stress that the body is going to endure when it hasn't done that in a while.
Yeah, so I think we tell a lot of our baseball players to keep like mini bands or super bands in their bag. Do you recommend that for golfers? Is there some easy setups that they could do, easy exercises they could do just to kind of warm up?
Truth be told, it's yeah, when I have our junior golfers, that is absolutely something because they're used to that. When
Hmm.
we're taking our 50 to 70 plus population and asking them to bring mini bands to the course to work on, they look at me funny like I'm gonna never hear the end of that if I show up with my buddies doing that. And I get it, I do. I ask people to do pelvic tilts as part of a warm up all the time, which looks really funny. So maybe it's something they do at home and then we give them bands to like work on, but just really it is ideal to do it before you start going because it's making your muscles warm. It's turning them on. It's priming and prepping them for the movement. So the closer you could do those muscle activation drills with or without mini bands right before you play is ideal.
Talk about clubs. I mean, I think I still need to go get myself fitted for clubs. I went to a golfer's warehouse and said, "Ooh, that one's pretty and that one matches this one," and it felt good to swing it. So, how important are golf clubs for the golfers, especially right now as you start to get back out there, but as your body changes, right? So I meant you hear the juniors, right? And then you have, you start to get into the senior level of the play. When do you change golf clubs? What kind of golf clubs? What are we looking at?
Yeah, so you bring up good points that our body changes as we age. Obviously, there's some obvious changes, like from a youth going into an adult, like your height's going to change, your strength is going to change, which also means the length of your clubs may or may not change, also the shaft type and the weight of the club. So those are all considerations for that. But then when we're talking about an adult going into a higher age, into, like, I hate to say this word, the geriatric population, but it
Sure.
is what it is. We have changes in how our body functions and how those muscles function. So we don't move the same as much
Mm.
as we try to maintain. It's just part of the aging process that we don't move the same. And so looking to change clubs at that point might be important. I remember just anecdotally when I started, I bought a starter kit and I could not hit them. Like I could not hit the ball. Like they weren't for me. And so
Mm.
I went and got fitted and it was night and day different. I will say one of the questions I asked was, is it worth, if you're new to golf, is it worth learning how to swing and getting that established with maybe some technique lessons first before getting fit for clubs? And the answer when I asked that question was it doesn't matter.
Mm.
Uh, but I definitely think it does because once I learn the proper technique, then I'm moving and swinging differently. I'm creating speed differently, which means a different shaft might have been more appropriate or a different angle. So it's just, I do think that it's worth having some technique down before investing in new clubs, which really only applies to the people who are newer to the sport.
Yeah, which it's one of the fastest growing sports, right? So it's one of those things where you see 2-year-olds out there who naturally swing, right? And then you have 90-year-olds that are still trying to get out there. And I actually had a comment from somebody the other day that was like, "I can't lose any more power. I need your help." And a 70-year-old guy that I was like, "Well, we have some opportunities to get you a little bit stronger, but naturally as you age, your club head speed's going to slow down, and so that's going to change how you're impacting. So yeah, talk a little bit about that too, of some of the changes.
To endure the same type of club. Like
Mm.
you might be able to get more yardage from using a different type of club, whether it be the shaft length, because
Mm.
we decrease in height. That's probably less common than the actual like flex of the club. But by changing that, you might actually get more yardage versus
Mm.
just strengthening. Just because that's we can't beat the aging process.
Right. No, so that makes sense. So it's not just taking care of your body, but it's making sure you have the right clubs at the right time and what you're trying to get to do. What are the top injuries that we see in golf, and how do we get word out there on prevention? I mean, there's some that probably can't be prevented just based off of the forces that you were talking about. But there's got to be some ways of protecting ourselves. So what's the most common injuries that you're seeing?
By far out of the park is low back injuries, and it's probably not even so much a golf injury as it was already there, and golf is just throwing fuel to the flame type of
Mm.
thing. So that's the most common that we see in the golf industry as a whole, and most common that I see as a physical therapist too. Um, so it's really important to work with those golfers and to try to get the word out that if you have pain going into golf, especially at the low back, like get that addressed because there's good I use this statistic a lot, but at our lower two levels of the spine, L4, L5 alone, you endure 8 to 10 times your body weight in one swing. So if that's already speaking to you to some capacity through the week, golf is going to increase that. And it's just a matter of time before it becomes a disability, meaning you got to stop playing or it's impacting your quality of life with work or
Mm.
being at home with your family. So I can't stress that enough. Don't be, yes, everyone has low back pain at some point, but it doesn't mean you have to live through it and suffer through it. You can change that. Some of the other common injuries we see are more so in the upper body. So we see a lot more tennis elbow, golfer's elbow. Um, but those are more the ones that are injuries because of playing golf. There's probably some sort of lower body dysfunction that contributes to it, but a lot of the injuries are likely to be something that was already there,
Mm.
exacerbated by golf.
I know I've read some literature that talks about dorsal wrist pain and how much dorsal wrist pain actually is contributed to first time golfers, and it's oftentimes those ones that just go and hit a bucket of 60 balls, and all of a sudden now their wrist is bothering them, and they're blaming the game and saying, maybe I shouldn't be a golfer. How do we address wrist in hand mechanics? Is it changing the grip type? Is it what kind of factors have you seen that could reduce some of the wrist pain that I know golfers are experiencing?
Yeah, we see more of the dorsal, so dorsal being like the knuckle side of your hand. Um, the pain there is really just from like a sudden change in volume. I do think that grip strength, like how strong someone can grip, is related to that. Um, there's so much that can go into that. For example, how someone grips the club. Are they doing the thumb in the grip? Are they doing a more interlocking? So that plays a role, but also when you have that, where are you placing your hands on the club? So even just how you place your hands on the club, there is a weak grip and a strong grip setup, and that's going to influence how your forearms and your those muscles function through backswing and downswing. I can't, I struggle even years of looking at the mechanics of truly understanding everything that the wrist and the forearm is doing during the backswing, especially, but backswing and downswing, it is confusing. And that is for an ideal golfer.
Mm.
So if we're more on the amateur side, like we're doing a lot of movements and sometimes compensating more with our upper body, which stresses the wrist a lot. So we do see that a lot from a medical perspective. And what we do is always look down below. Again, it's usually a lower body dysfunction. Perhaps we are not having a strong basis support, meaning we have some balance or stability issues. Or I'm not maximizing my hips and the rotational load into the hips well. So because of that, our body will naturally try to get some more power and speed from upper body that we're maybe more familiar using, maybe from previous sports or just because. And if I'm not using my lower body, I'm gonna compensate with the upper body. So we always look there first. I do check grip strength often, more times than not, from day-to-day activities that we're doing. We're gripping like with this part of our hand, but the club is so small in how it sits in our hand. So I always test the grip in that position. Um, it should be more of a finger grip versus a palmar grip too. So there's so much that goes into it, is my point. But we do look at all that in terms of changing the grip strength, or sorry, the grip size. We don't see that as much unless
Mm.
there's a lot of arthritic changes in the hand. That's where it really comes into handy. um, but for the majority of the population, it's keeping the same grip, but changing maybe how we grip, or considering changing, how we're actually moving the body. Yep.
You had I know you had talked about the other day, you were all jazzed up. We were chatting about an article about like the kinematic sequence and where does the power come from. And you talked about a little bit of that, like kind of that little pop, or that tempo, or that impulse that we were talking about. Talk about that article a little bit, and what you're looking forward to doing. I know we're trying to do some research studies and trying to get some more healthy golfers in, but also those that are going across the aging, span of life. And so talk about a little bit of that literature and what you think that's going to do.
I think that particular article, I read several that day, so I might overlap a little bit in what I recall, but they were referring to use of the speed sticks. So a lot of people, for training purposes, and I see it in their golf club, they bring it right to the range and they do it as part of their warm up. They're weighted sticks that they just start swinging. So this particular article was looking at how that influences the swing, especially the first drive of the day, the second drive, what is that looking at? And it really didn't have a lot of carryover into play.
Hmm.
So they weren't recommending that piece of it. Um, I feel like there was another article that I was hyped up about too that you might be more referring to that I can't even recall at the top of my head right now.
Yeah, I think it was the one that you were talking about where power actually comes from. And I think it was we were surprised by how much it actually showed that pulse that yeah. So that one was the one that I was kind of thinking about, and I think I spurred your mind a little bit. So go ahead, talk about that one a little bit.
So like a little shaky on my memory of this. You know me, my memory sucks, but I think they were alluding to the fact that there was there was a certain timing of our golf swing where the upper body was very dominant in this swing.
Hmm.
And I think it surprised me. I would have to go back and look at that to speak to it better. So I don't want to share or spread rumors on that. But I mean, you and I know a lot that majority of the speed and the strength comes from below,
Hmm.
starting from the ground. How are we pushing through the ground? How are we applying Newton's law? Where do those forces go in how we're gripping the ground, because it's really going to generate how the rest of our body moves on that. But yeah, I'll have to come back again and talk about that article. I was only reading the abstract anyway, so I'll
But
have to read those a little better to
it's
really.
early in the season. We'll get you back on the show a little bit more to talk a little bit more about that article, but talk about the TPI movement screen. I know we use it a lot within our own practice, but why is it beneficial, and how do you work with somebody's golf professional to try to stave off injuries, to try to improve the longevity of a golfer's career? We're going into the time frame where as soon as that nice spring day comes out, people are going to go play 18, they're going to go play 36, they're going to go play Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and they're not going to kind of rest in between. And so what does the TPI do, and how do we get the word out there to get more people investing in it?
Yeah, good question. So the TPI's philosophy is that our body is an alternating system of mobile and stable segments. So, for example, our knee really only moves forward and back. That's a more stable joint versus the next one up at the hip. Like we can move our leg all over the place.
Mm.
So we should have that alternating stable, mobile, especially as golfers. So a lot of that applies to the TPI movement screen, which is really just looking at taking a individual and looking to see how they move. Do you have good mobility here? Do you have good stability there? And
Mm.
if you don't, those are some things that we should probably work on, because it's probably contributing to a movement dysfunction in your swing. Um, when it comes to working with golf teaching professionals, 100%. Like, I'm a medical provider. I'm not going to tell you how you should um, really swing the club, but I'm going to try to maximize how your body's moving with that club. And so when I'm looking at how someone swings and they come out of the motion lab and I get this great report, if they are moving great, but something's wonky, like that's probably more technique. So he's going to be tickled pink if he listens to this podcast and realize I'm referring back to one individual who had probably 5 spinal surgeries and
Mm.
is continue playing golf and pickleball as it should be. Like, so, he had some fusions in there. Some were just laminectomies or discectomies. So I know I'm not going to improve his mobility 100%. Things are now physically anatomically
Sure.
fused. Um, so it's really maximizing some other areas. And after we did the 3D swing assessment, it was really like, you know what? You're moving great where I want you to be moving, and your strength is progressing really nicely where you need it. This is a point where we might consider actually working with a teaching professional to change the swing, because there's different swing styles, classic versus modern versus kind of the hybrid between the two. He's historically always been more of a modern swing where you have that strong dissociation between upper body and lower body, so that big stretch or X factor. And that's someone who is not that's not achievable anymore. It's not the goal anymore. So I'm not going to show him what a classic swing looks like, because that's more of a technique. So that's really where they come in for
Mm.
me. I love working with golf teaching professionals who have had the TPI at least level 1, so they know what I'm referring to. Those are great, but even so, like, I know my lane, I stick to it, and I love collaborating with other, teaching golf professionals to help the golfer.
So I think I heard some key points too. Is we know that as you age, surgeries tend to pop up, right? The backs, which we know is the most number one diagnosis for an injury that people tend to seek out care for. And then you have fusions and you have microdiscectomies, and there's even disc replacements now for a lot of technology and advancements. And how about like the total hips and total knees? Are we talking that they can get back on the course, or is this like a nah, maybe you pick up pickleball a little bit more instead of golf? What are you seeing out there, and what modifications are people having to make?
I'm actually really happy that a good amount of my patient population is post-op hip and knees being sent by their orthopedic to us to safely return to golf. Because what we've seen is, on the flip side, they're 2 years, maybe 3 years, maybe a year out from a total hip replacement, and their hip is pissed off as they're trying to golf.
Mm.
100% you can return to golf. It is not an unsafe sport. Whether you have total shoulder, total joint, or total hip, or total knee, yes, like, let's help you get back to that sport, but making sure we're doing it safely. So we know after an injury, like, we might limp for a while, like our body just develops this protective mechanism, and sometimes it lingers maybe longer than it should.
Mm.
We see this especially with total hip replacements. A lot of times, depending on the type of surgery you had, the physicians are limiting for a short period of time how much rotation, like, don't cross your legs, try to limit your twisting and deep bending. Well, golf is a rotational sport, so
Mm.
you haven't ensured that you can actually have rotation of the hip. It's going right to your back next.
Mm.
Or the hip is just going to get really pissed off if it's not used to that. So I'm glad I'm seeing more of those cases, because we're preventing, or at least, if it is like a year out, we're changing it. We're getting those hips to be firing the way they should.
Mm. We have some cool technology that you use, right, to get those athletes back in. What piece of technology are you most excited for now? And how do you see yourself using it?
You just set me up for a grand slam here. So yeah,
Teeing you up, not a grand slam. We're teeing you up.
thank you. Um, our motion lab has invested in new technology where we can finally take our lab and bring it outside anywhere. So we call it a portable lab. Um, the individual will get set up with some inertial sensors too, so we know how fast certain segments are moving through space, as well as the cameras capturing the movement. Before, it would require a lot more time to set certain reflective markers up on certain joints to create a 3D skeleton, and then you had like 11 or 12 different cameras that have to be already set up in a space with certain lighting to capture that movement. And now we don't have that, so we're not bound to the lab. In addition, we also have inserts that we're putting into the golfer's shoe to collect more of the ground reaction force data. And again, we can bring that to the range, we can bring it to the tee box. So sky's the limit here. I'm probably busting at the seams with how much really cool things I want to do with the community and helping to invest in our research with golfers, especially women. They're so um, understudied, I guess is the best way to say it. Like we need more research because a female golfer is different than a male golfer,
Mhm.
not because they golf differently, but because of their anatomical setup. So like I want to do research. I want to help our athletes to be the best that they can be, and this is really allowing us to do that in the future.
It's actually interesting you say that because, you know, in given the current climate of things, ACLs in general, right? There's a lot of ACL literature out there, but very, very little of it actually looks at females, which is
Went to these injuries, like it's wild.
right, right. And so we talk about talking about the female athlete, right? And or even the female golfer. Oftentimes we have those that are coming, you know, post pregnancy and having or postpartum and want to get back on the golf course. And you know there we know there's anatomy that changes after having a child. We know that there's sleep habits that change after having a child. And you know it's interesting to me about the fact that we're lacking the literature, given the fact that that's a lot of our life is you know this kind of spectrum of changes, from hormone changes all the way to actually how our physiological body changes. And a golfer that female golfer that is 11 is swings and acts differently, both from a body perspective than a 14-year-old, than a 16-year-old would, even than a 23-year-old, a 30-year-old, a 50-year-old, and a 60-year-old. You know, and I think you've had some cool opportunities to even work with the Latina Golf League in Connecticut, and it's been fun to kind of see the different demographics that you've gotten exposed to. But yeah, I'm excited for some opportunities to research that and really get that going. And you know, I think golf in general is a retirement sport too, where you have a lot of athletes that have retired from another sport, and they pick up golf. Like I look at like Caitlin Clark, like she jokes all the time that if she wasn't in the NBA, she'd probably try to be on the LPGA. And talk about some of the differences that you see from a female golfer perspective, and what are you most excited to try to help females understand as they get back or onto the golf course, and recognizing that women weren't allowed to golf until like recent centuries. You know, they weren't allowed in the clubhouse and a lot of those things. And so talk a little bit about the female golfer.
I didn't even know where to start. First of all, I think it's awesome that women in this sport is growing like really fast. That's awesome. But again, like we need to help them. And so this is where like having these opportunities is really great. And I'll put in a plug because working in the past with Estella and the Latinas golf, like it's just networking. Like I want to be part of the community. I want to be helping the community. So like those relationships are so critical to helping connect women with one another and growing the sport even more in a safe but fun way. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I love that. I think COVID was really a great accelerator for women in golf, particularly. Um, the main differences with the male and the female that we see is naturally women are much weaker in their upper body than they are in their lower body versus the male. So how we utilize our strength and what we pull from is different. So we might need to have a different setup stance than a male, especially when it comes to the breast tissue. Um, where we put our arms might change from one female to another. So there's no jack of all trades here. Like you got to be thinking about those things and having those considerations. And for the longest time in a male dominated sport, even male golf coaches and teaching professionals just apply the same things, as they would. So I'm happy to see that these golf teachers and professionals, they're seeking out more education to work with their female golfers because I think that's really important.
Yeah, there's been a lot of studies that actually look at fatigue factor around the menstrual cycle too. And we on our Keeper Playing conference, that was one of our key talking points, was that sometimes strength, we can't actually build strength during certain parts of the menstrual cycle. And you bring up a good point about the breast tissue, and honestly, our pelvises are different too, right? So the female pelvises tend to be a little bit more wider in preparation for some of the body stresses that come with life decisions of having children. And so, I think we talk about the X factor alone can be different compared females to males. And I think one of the exciting things that I heard the other day is one of our collegiate athletes, a female athlete, she got a hole in one and hold out, and I think that was a huge celebration and pretty exciting. And
So upset though for her because the next day I was looking at NBC News and they were featuring a female freshman collegiate golfer who had a hole in one at a tournament. And I was like, oh my God, this is her. And I go to click on it. It's not. I was like, ah, yeah, I'm still happy for that one, but like, dang, her coach saw it too, which is great. So she was jazzed. It's really exciting when people do that for sure. But yeah, I was hoping she could have some more publicity on that.
yeah, I think we gotta have to do a better job of identifying those avenues for people. Talk a little bit about hydration and maybe a little bit about the beginning of golf season, March, April, and what people need to do all season long to be able to play well in October, November. Some golf courses are staying open longer as long as there's not snow on the ground. So what other things do our listeners need to know about playing golf and how to hydrate, how to fuel, and how to keep that October, November ready to go?
Recovery.
Yeah.
A lot more recovery than you think. I mean, golf is such a social sport. We see it a lot that if not on the courses with alcohol, it's meeting at the clubhouse after with alcohol. And alcohol is again one of those things that's just gas on a fire. So you're likely to have some sort of inflammation being sparked in your body while we're playing, whether just from walking on terrain. If you have a like incline with arthritic knees, like that's a form of inflammation occurring in your body, and it's just the accelerant to that.
Mm.
And I don't think people realize that. So hydration is super important in the form of water with electrolytes, especially if it's hot out.
Mm.
Like, if we're not sweating and it's hot out, like that's a problem. The color of your urine could be a big eye opener on that. It's not really supposed to be a vibrant yellow. And if you are sweating, think about how much fluid's leaving your body. We need to make sure that we're replacing that. Um, you know, this other anecdotal story, he's going to be upset if he heard me talk about this, but he didn't know that he was dehydrated the other day and we pushed him. And it's not just about hydration and feeling thirsty and maybe not even having enough energy, but his blood pressure plummeted and
Mm.
didn't come back up. So hydration is it's the volume in our blood. So if we don't have if we're dehydrated and we're just going through activity, it can affect your blood pressure too. So I'm just putting that plug in there because it was a big eye opener, I think, for both of us. Um, so yeah, hydration, also taking care of your body after. What does your sleep habits look like? What are your like stretching program look like after? On your off days, what are you doing? Are you going back to work and sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day and then going to your league that night and all of a sudden swinging, walking, like stressing the body completely different will have an effect on that. So the accumulation of playing throughout the year can be challenging in that sense, and we don't even realize it's taking a slow progressive toll on our body. So recovery is a big part of that. um, and just keeping in mind, if you're having pain when you're golfing, you should probably seek some medical attention,
Mm.
uh, because that oftentimes progresses through the season to the point where you just have to stop playing golf altogether. That's
Mm.
never our goals as medical professionals to be like, "Oh, you're having pain, yeah, stop playing." Like we hate saying that. So
Hmm.
like, let's not get to that point.
Yeah. No, I think that's important. And I think what we also need to let listeners know too is recognize how much you're walking, and walking pushing a cart versus walking and carrying your bag, versus riding in a golf cart. And sometimes, especially early in the season right now, golf carts aren't allowed on out on the course. And so it is a lot of walking. And I think, we see an uptick in plantar fasciitis referrals right now, just because people are going from sitting on the couch and walking on treadmills inside, and now all of a sudden it's nice out and they go outside. And I say, so just like having that awareness of, if you're playing a lot and you're starting to feel fatigue and you don't have that recovery in, then maybe it is a day to ride, or maybe it's a day to practice your short game and not take the drive, and let somebody else take the drive, and play a little bit of a different style of play that day. And I think the cool thing is even with the recovery from an injury perspective, we don't go out there and tell you to swing with your driver first, right? We actually have a pretty good guideline of how to return to sports and what clubs to use first. And talk a little bit about that. What clubs when you're coming back from a major surgery and injury do we typically recommend for people to try first, and that return to play progression?
Yeah, we usually always go with, chipping and putting first. Like, go back to the basics and build your foundation from like back up. Um, Longer clubs, your drivers, your woods, hybrids, that's a longer lever for the body. It's gonna create more stress naturally. So just if we could start at the smaller clubs, moving into the irons and progressing up to the hybrids and woods, that is the safer way to do so. I think what I really like about our program, and sometimes I deviate off it a little bit, and that's fine. It's not a one size fits all, but it's a guide tool, as you
Mm-hmm.
say, not a protocol. Um, but what I like about it is I'm pretty strict in the 24-hour rule. So if you are working through a block on the guideline where it says let's do 20 20 shots with your 8 and 9 iron, a 5 minute rest, 15 with your 8 iron again, 5 minutes, whatever it may be. If you had pain during or after within 24 hours, you don't progress yourself. You give yourself that 24-hour rest and you repeat again. If you're truly not able to consecutively progress off of that, like let's go back. It's okay to go back.
Mm.
But we're not going back because we injured ourselves. Jumping to the driver could injure ourselves and
Sure.
actually set us back, possibly even more than a month of our progress in rehab. So I'm really strict about like that 24-hour pain rule and using that as your green light, red light, yellow light.
Yeah, I mean, that honestly sounds like a fantastic thing to do in February, March, and April anyway, is start with chipping and putting, work your way into low irons, before you're going and actually swinging the full driver. And it's we have a lot of people that are going to go 0 to 100 right now, right? And they're going to just go out there. Yeah, yeah. I'm guilty of it too. Usually, the first time I play is some tournament that I got invited to play with, and I haven't played since the last tournament I played in, which is usually in October or November. And I'm like, sure, and I get out there, and I think we all need to just recognize that the human body, while amazing, is also at risk of a lot of things when we have age bias where we say, no, I'm not the age that I am. I'm still 20, right? And we got to maybe fix that a little bit. We're coming up on the end of our podcast, but one thing, speaking about looking in your bag, I found a orange from the last season that I never finished. So what's interesting in your bag? If we were to look in your bag right now, what would we find?
Um, Mice.
Oh no! Oh no!
I must have had like a snack or something in from last year in my bag set in the garage, and I have a couple holes and some zippers I can no longer use. So
Oh.
I was bummed about that. But in a general sense, what might have been in there that they were enjoying was I always have some sort of protein bar. I'm trying to get some quick fuel as I'm out, and especially in an 18-hole play. I'm good about trying to eat a meal within 2 hours of playing. Um, Sometimes I'll actually, if I know I need to hydrate more, I'll bring a little bit more of a salty item out, like little pretzel sticks, because I want that salt to go in and give my head a cue that I do need to drink more water. So that's one of my go-tos, always a protein bar and perhaps a salty product.
Yeah. And sunscreen and a water bottle and your cleat cleaner. Well, thank you for joining us on our podcast, and for our viewers, hopefully you learned a lot today. And we're hoping to get another podcast going about Little League and how to help parents fuel, all of those recreational athletes and all of the travel teams, knowing that we're going into the season of endless tournaments. And so we look forward to having our dietitian back on our next podcast, and hopefully we'll have Sarah back again in the future. And thank you for sticking with us.